Hello, everyone. Yes, it is not Monday. It is Friday, but good reason because I got to spend earlier this week in Colorado with an incredible group of educators that I am so excited we get to work with over the coming year. And we were into lots of data, lots of different kinds of data visualizations, geeking out around the data and the different pieces and the data moves and how we help our students make sense of all of the different pieces, like all of the many steps that it takes to help our students work with and make sense of data. And all can feel really overwhelming, but it's not, right? If we break it down into small chunks and if we make it fun. So, what I want to share out are some of the really fun examples and talk through some of the conversations we were having as we were using the tried and true. I've talked about it before. Love thinking, let me make this a little bit bigger. Love thinking of how can we get our students talking about themselves, right? We were doing this with educators this week in Colorado, but we talked a lot about how we can this technique we can bring to our students, sort of talking about themselves as a way to make some visualizations. So here is one of my most favorite visualizations to make. Yay, the scatter plot. We have two continuous variables that are going into our scatter plot, but this one, right, is fun. We're looking at sort of years working in education and length of a typical commute in minutes of a one-way commute. Now, I want to point out sort of your attention to all of these extra little words and carrots and different pieces of things that are showing up here on the screen as we're thinking about it because we put up the structure, the shell. So, right, let me backtrack. Okay, so what did we do? All of the red text we had ready to go. And then when everybody arrived on Tuesday morning, because we're that much fun, we are like, here is your little bucket of stickers and post-it notes and beads. And I'll show you all of those different things in a moment. Go around the room, answer these questions so that we can learn about our community together as we co-construct some graphs. So we had the red part. We'd added the question, we had added the scales, the axes, we had scaled it, all of those things. So in everybody's bucket, they had a sticker. This is how we did it because those were the materials that we have, but you can do it in any different way. And so as they were coming in, they were needing to sort of look at, okay, how many years have I been working in education? And then what is my typical morning commute when I'm going to school? But then all these great questions kept coming up of well, is it a one-way commute or both ways? Which helps us narrow in and focus in on what it is we're asking and what we're trying to visualize. Sometimes we ask those questions when we're initially thinking okay, how do we want to collect the data? But we can also ask those questions as we are collecting the data and visualizing at the exact same time, which is what we were doing here. Okay, so another great example is the use of post-it notes to help our students practice histograms. We found out that we had some zero inbox humans. Just side note, I'm so deeply impressed, slightly aspire to be a less than 10 emails in my inbox human. Don't think I will ever get to the zero inbox type of situation. But sort of again, we did the green. And again, questions kept coming up as folks were filling them out, which is fantastic because that showed us we were getting some active engagement and all of those different things. So we can do scatter plots, we can do histograms with post-it notes, things like that. But these are pretty typical, awesome, tried and true visualizations that we're using in middle school and high school, that we should be using in middle school and high school to have our students make sense of data and visualizations. But then we had some more fun and we were asked, okay, so what can we learn about three random apps from your phone? Looks an awful lot like the histogram in the picture before, but in fact, it's really different. And actually, what we have down here is we've got a Likert scale, different categories. One thing we learned is that people like to talk about apps they use a lot. Like when they pick three random apps, they often are drawn to apps that they use all the time. We also saw some really fun things as it relates to apps of some apps showing up across the whole spectrum of I never use it to use it all the time. This is actually more of a bar chart, right? Because we've got our distinct categories going across, but it's kind of a different way to think about it because each each sticky note, each small sticky note had an app to it, right? So we could have said our variable was the app, but that's not what we were interested in. We were interested in what is the frequency with which we use these different apps, and then across the whole group, what was going on. So this created that frequency bar chart for us. Now, this one was one that I just got so excited about. Okay, so we were asking, when is your birthday? And we set this up to be a bit like, again, the black here is what we set up. We set this to be a bit like a heat map. So we had, day 1 through 31, and we had January through December across the bottom. And then we all came in and we had our little sticky notes. And this, can you see this right here? July 9th, we did it. We had more than 21 people in the room and we got it. We got a double birthday, which was just like, I've been trying for this year, so it was so excited to finally see this. But you can imagine, this was, I forget how many of us answered this question. If we'd asked even more, and if we got those smiley faces to layer up, then we would know that that was a cluster, and that's what our heat map is showing us. Should we spend the time to teach a heat map, how to create a heat map to our students? I'm not really sure that that's really a good use of our time pre-high school, but we can absolutely get them to be telling us their birthday and see if we have any birthday overlaps and exposing them to this. We have to think about the two coordinate axes, where their intersections are as they're plotting their sticker down. They feel like they're talking about their birthday. We get to nerd out and see if we have any double birthdays, or maybe that's just me. I'll use my I statement there. I get to nerd out to see if we have any double birthdays. And we're exposing them to a different kind of visualization. Speaking of exposure to a different visualization, I don't even know what we would call this one. We had a lot of fun with this one. So it's, how does the weather affect your mood? And so when everybody arrived, what this looked like is we had a circle for each person, and the bottom half was colored in with our sun and our clouds. So we were trying to indicate partly cloudy. And then we had this legend set up of the different colors, and we had some markers down below. So then each person picked a bubble and got to write in, got to color in like, oh, a partly cloudy makes me feel calm. And so then we could sort of see some individuals. We've got some of us that in the group that felt grumpy, some felt really excited, some felt joyful and excited. I liked there was sort of creative liberty here on this one. Then we could also kind of look overall across all of us. How did the partly cloudy weather make us feel? And so we were moving away from that traditional scatter plot where we have our axes or things like that, but we're still talking about ourselves, visualizing information in creative ways to think about not only an individual case, but the aggregate overall across all of us. Okay, one other sort of creative way to do it. So here we were asking, what distracts you the most from getting things done? And we set the color scale here. And then this is where the beads came in. So we gave them beads. We gave 6 options of what might distract them. Here, let me zoom in to see if you guys can see this a little bit better. And so then everybody responded with their beads. They put their beads in that order of what distracted them the most. And so we could absolutely leave it here where we just have the beads down. We could also, let's see if I can get to the next one. Then we took those beads and we put them on pipe cleaners, and we organized them from sort of least purple to most up the pipe cleaners for all of the different categories so that we could see across. And we could see that most of us were most distracted by somebody else, as opposed to not many of us were as distracted by social media. And so we could see that in slightly different ways than we could when we were just looking at all the beads. You can kind of tell that there's lots of red and oranges here and more purples here. But when we look at it, when we connected it into the pipe cleaners, it was even more. Or we could go 3-dimensional and we could pull them out. So just a couple just sort of fun different ways that we were playing with visualizations this past week as we got to know each other as educators that we can absolutely bring to our students, both in traditional graphing types that are showing up in our curriculum and our standards, and in more creative, flexible graphing types that create opportunities to keep exposing them to data visualizations in ways that might be a little more fun or playful or creative, but we're still working on those skills that we can use for the graph types in our curriculum. Okay, hopefully you got some ideas. It was so great to be with everyone in Colorado. Thanks for your patience as I did not jump in until Friday to do this data bite. I hope you are doing well. Have a wonderful weekend. Until we see each other again, stay curious, keep exploring,